All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in once again to another episode of the Victorious Ones podcast, the place where gaming meets comics, meets sports, meets movies, as well as inspiration. Of course, I go by the name of King Von Jr., of course. And of course, thank you very much for tuning in. And, so of course, like I said, of course, you can follow me on social media, of course, on the handles at the bottom of the screen. If you're watching by way of Facebook, watching by way of YouTube, of course, youtube.com/at Von Resper Jr. And of course, if you're on Facebook, you can also follow, follow the show, the show's Facebook group, Victorious Ones podcast. Victorious One's podcast page. So of course, like I said, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for watching my interview last week with Luke from Cheap Pop Wrestling, in regards to Fantasy Faction. So actually, without further ado, hold on. Something special gift right here, courtesy of Fantasy Faction. Of course, I wore this on Monday on a Perfect Plex Talk Radio. But yeah, like I said, it's a special edition, Fantasy Faction T-shirt. Like I said, shout out to them, and like I said, greatly appreciate all the work that they put in. And of course, speaking of fantasy, definitely going to be getting into that in a minute. But of course, without further ado, the main topic that I really want to cover. There are a number of topics that I want to cover, as far as on this show tonight. Of course, especially the main focus for me will be none other than the WWE draft, as well as these lawsuits, going on, which is just insane, just absolutely heinous. All the details that have been coming out about it, and also, like I said, also the WWE design. I don't know how much I'm gonna get into, but of course, I wanted to at least give an overview of of my 50 greatest wrestlers list, even though we delved into it a little bit last week. But I want to at least go over my criteria as to why certain people are ranked ranked where they are. What I mean? So of course, in that regard, what I mean? So like in regards to, of course, so those are the main things I want to cover. Like, so, as far as the current draft, of course, like, the new design, the lawsuits, also my all-time, some all-time WWE draft in regards to SmackDown and Raw. Like I said, like I said, the main, like I said, the main thing I wanted to cover would be the WWE draft. So I'm gonna see at least what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna give at least give a recap of of some of the picks. I'll also, like, in just my thoughts in terms of how this brings some sort of balance when it comes to the roster. So, at least here's an overview of some of the names, or at least many of the names that that were drafted. I don't have all the names just for the sake of time, but of course, when it comes to Raw, you have Cody Rhodes, Becky Lynch, Imperium, Matt Riddle, Drew McIntyre, The Miz, Shinsuke Nakamura, Indy Hartwell, Apollo Crews, Candice LeRae. Of course, all coming from NXT. Sonya Deville, Chelsea Green, Dexter Lumis, JD McDonough, Maximum Male Models, Natalia, Viking Raiders, Zoe Stark, Rhea Ripley, of course, the SmackDown Women's Champion, switching over to Raw. The entire Judgment Day themselves, Seth Rollins, New Day, Trish Stratus, just to name a few. For SmackDown, of course, for SmackDown, of course, the Bloodline, mainly consisting of Roman, Solo, and Heyman. Of course, Bianca Belair, and of course, with Bianca as a package deal, of course, come along with her will be the Street Profits, since WWE wants to make sure that that wrestlers and their spouses are together. So that's why that's why wherever Becky goes, Seth is going to follow, right? And same thing when it comes to Bianca, Montez is going to follow. So hence SmackDown, you got Bianca, and then right after her, Street Profits were drafted. After that, of course, you also have Edge, Bobby Lashley, the OC, which means the return of AJ Styles. Hopefully, they'll run back AJ versus Roman. Damage Control, Alba Fire, East London, both from NXT. Hit Row, Lacey Evans, Austin Theory, Charlotte Flair, the Usos, LWO, Asuka, Brawling Brutes, Karrion Kross and Scarlett, LA Knight, Shotzi, Pretty Deadly, Rick Boogs, Cameron Grimes, Tamina, and Grayson Waller. So if anything, that's a rundown of this year's draft. And as far as the free agents, among the main free agents, of course, are Brock Lesnar and Omos. So for Omos to be a free agent, I don't know exactly why, but it's whatever. So like I said, so for me, I would say that that this brings at least a sense of balance, especially when it came to like the last time there was a draft. There was it was pretty short change when it came, I guess, when it came to like some of the women's rosters or whatever. But like I said, I think this kind of sort of evens things out, even though early on it felt very one-sided in favor of SmackDown. But now that everything's fleshed out, especially when it comes to Raw, like I said, I feel that there is more of an even balance, even though there are a lot of things that they could really work on. Like, for instance, I've been hearing this a lot in the sense, especially yesterday, I was on a Turnbuckle Talk discussion on Twitter Spaces, right? And so, so one of the things, our biggest concern was the fact that it didn't feel like a draft. It didn't really have that big draft night feel, the way that the NFL draft is, the way the NBA draft, and things like that. We actually have everybody in the locker room, and you can see their see their reactions in real time, or even like the earlier WWE drafts where they had everybody in the locker room, and then when their name was called, you could see their expression. Like, for instance, like the very first draft in WWE history when The Rock went number one, of course, so like when The Rock went to number one, as soon as Vince announced his name, they show The Rock's face, showed his expression, showed his reaction in the locker room. Undertaker had the funniest reaction, for the WWE draft I think I've ever seen. That was hilarious. Like I said, moments like that are, like I said, are really what makes it really feel like, it just brings the humor out of it. Just brings the character out of it, the personality of it. But but at the same time, because of the world we live in with the internet and social media and stuff like that, everybody knows who's married to who and things like that. So it's just like that kind of takes away that that sort of kayfabe element, if you will. What I mean? So if anything, that'd be the main thing that I kind of got out of it, in terms of with like that's kind of missing that element that's missing, like I said, big special draft night feel. I think that's it's one of the things that that is kind of lacking. And before I go any further, I also want to give a special happy birthday shout out to Graham from the Public Enemies podcast. Hence, that's why I'm wearing this shirt right now. What I mean? Like I say, salute. What I mean? So of course, like I said, of course, like I said, big fan of the show and everything that they do. So happy birthday to Graham. But yeah, so like I said, as far as when it comes to this draft, it's pretty much like it's just like whatever. One of those things where you gotta make the most of it, but at the same time, it's just it's pretty much like now of course, when it comes to the draft, obviously you have the WWE Championship, and there's a big dilemma in terms of who would be the first one to hold it. And I think the consensus choice, from what I've been hearing a lot, has been Seth Rollins. So on one end, it would make sense for him to be the inaugural champion, but at the same time, I think that because this belt has a stigma around it, it's seen as like a consolation prize, even though the design looks great, but just the circumstances that this belt was introduced in, like I said, it gives a sort of stigma to it. So it's just like, on winning, you want Seth or you want Cody to win it, but at the same time, it's just like they're still going to be tagged with the label of the guys that could not take the belt away from Roman, even though Seth, does have a quote unquote W over Roman by disqualification, but at the same time, you still couldn't get the belt off him, right? So it's just like it's one of those things where, I mean, it's cool, but at the same time, you didn't really finish the job all the way, you know. So you know what I mean, so it's like one of those things where where they pretty much have their hands tied because of circumstances, because it's hard for them to find any type of idea to to get those belt, to split those titles and everything like that. So it's just like, you know what, um it's like Triple H is kind of like, the here, go and take, it's just like, here, take this belt and get out of my face, just leave me alone. You got what you wanted, leave me alone. Here you go, just throwing at you, just like somebody, it's like one of those things, where somebody's just begging for popcorn. It's like, okay, you want it, here you go, leave me alone, you got it, right? That's how this belt kind of feels. So it's because of the fact that pretty much they have their hands tied, almost like, excuse the expression, almost held at gunpoint, basically, in terms of introducing this title. So it's one of those things where it's just like, it's like I said, somewhere of a dilemma, right? And I want to keep rambling on and on about it or whatever. But if there's anybody, I guess the inaugural champion, would generally have to be Seth, if not Cody. You know what I mean? So, and if anything, if there's anybody I wish, had he not been injured, as an inaugural champion, just to add even more weight to the title, just an extra level of credibility, for me would have been Randy Orton. Seeing if, in that regard, if unless you go to SmackDown, and he could be the guy to possibly beat Roman, but at the same time, I don't know if that's really in the cards right now at this point in his career. But yeah, like I said, from a consensus standpoint, I was pretty much, pretty much probably have to, just have to go with Seth Rollins, in that aspect. So like I say, it's the belt is a combination of things. It's the big gold, a little bit of Wayne Eagle, a little bit of the WWE Network ish, type of feel to it, especially with that giant W over the big gold belt and things like that. Is aesthetically, it's one of the best designs that I've ever seen. But like I said, because of the circumstances that it's under, it doesn't really, it kind of takes away, almost feel like a consolation prize type of thing, so sorry about that, so those are my thoughts on that title, and and also my recap of, I've seen this, like I said, pretty much my recap of my recap of this year's draft. And one of the biggest surprises for me is the fact that Trish Stratus was drafted as if she's full time, right? Meanwhile, ironically, Roman is part time, but but at the same time, even though Roman was already drafted first overall, but still, the fact that Trish was was actively drafted into this as if she's still on the roster, right? Even though she's already in the Hall of Fame, but but like I said, that was one of the bigger surprises for me when when it came to this draft. And the fact that Edge was drafted ahead of Bobby Lashley, I get it that it's Edge. I get it that that he's the legend that he is, the Hall of Famer. But at the same time, you could get more mileage out of Lashley than you could out of Edge, right? So if anything, I would have switched that around. But but of course, like I said, because of I guess because of Edge's marquee value, it's just like, what, let's go, pretty much like, what, pretty much like, let's go ahead and sort of like run with it, right? And so but like I said, I guess that was a bigger surprise for me, was was the fact that it was the fact that Trish was drafted the way that she was drafted, and Lita was not drafted, right? That was a huge surprise for me, because I would think that it's kind of like a package deal. If Trish is going somewhere, Lita is going to be not far behind. You know what I mean? So, and also with the fact that Bianca and Rhea swap brands, especially with Bianca making the history that she's been making as the Raw Women's Champion, the longest reigning Raw Women's Champion of all time. And so it's just like now, You know what I mean? It's just like, that now they do a switch. But I would say that Bianca and Rhea's title swap is going to be in better taste, more respectable than Charlotte and Becky. So, because of the fact that Bianca and Rhea are, actually friends outside the ring. You know what I mean? Like I said, they actually have a very healthy level of respect for each other. That where competition is not getting in the way. You know what I mean? So as far as a title swap, I would think that it'd be more respectable, but at the same time, there are new possibilities, for Bianca on SmackDown. Even though she could run back the WrestleMania match with Asuka, and have a deeper feud with her over there. What I mean? But also at the same time, I guess one of my concerns is the fact that Lacey Evans is going to be waiting in the wings. And I hope that she's not going to be the one to end Bianca's title reign. I would not want to see Lacey end Bianca's title reign. But at the same time, now the door is wide open officially. The possibilities are wide open for for Bianca, for Charlotte, because that's the last horsewoman, for Bianca to face and to defeat. That's the last head for her to collect. So now they're officially on the same brand, and like I said, in that regard, see that matchup is possible. And on Raw, you can have Rhea versus Becky for the Raw Women's Championship. So at least it opens up the window to new matchups, new possibilities, and things like that. So so on the plus, I would say that's one of the one of the one of the pluses that got out of this draft. So like I said, those are my thoughts on the draft. Those are my thoughts on on the championship. And another thing I of course I want to touch on, another topic that I really want to tackle. I know it's going to be the tougher topic, for me to tackle. But at the same time, it's like right in your face. And the thing is, I didn't want to make this the central topic of my episode to the point where I didn't want this to be a part of the to be a part of the title of my episode. So like I said, it was one of those topics, but at the same time, I'm not gonna make it the direct focus to the point where, like I said, to where it's literally in the title. So of course, as we all know, the infamous lawsuit that WWE is facing, this discrimination lawsuit, like racism lawsuits, and of course, especially with with a former WWE writer who was fired, a black woman named Brittany Abrams, who's coming forth, and and of course testifying, against WWE, and several names that are in this in this case, including Vince McMahon, Stephanie McMahon, among several WWE writers and people in creative, and just how like saying creative and like the HR department and things like that, and just how detestable these documents are, these details are, in regards to the storylines, in regards to the racist storylines involving Bianca, involving Reginald, and also the fact that there's somebody who, like a wrestler named Mansoor, who's who they say was supposed to be revealed as as someone who had secrets to, like like who was behind like 9/11 attacks and all this other just gross, horrible things that were done in horrible taste. Like that there was even a story where they were supposed to have Reginald dressed in drag, and it was supposed to be like some white wrestler, who was supposed to be who's gonna have some type of like hunter like a gimmick as a hunter who hunts down black people, who hunts down black wrestlers, things like that, and also like how Bianca was made to feel uncomfortable, because they wanted her character to be quote unquote ghetto and stuff like that. And like I said, it's just, it's just the fact that, WWE is so ignorant and, and just so tone deaf, out of place, out of pocket, out of order. And the sad thing about it is that they have have such an enormous track record over the years, in that regard, whether it comes to stereotypical characters, stereotypical storylines. I mean, so many things that they'll push different races back by decades. You know what I mean? And I mean, like I said, in regard, like I said, whether it was, so like I said, whether stuff, when it comes to Crime Time, Coco Beware, you name it, all this other stuff. Also that segment where DX went to Nation Domination's locker room and spray paint all this racist stuff like the N word, all everything like that, and blamed it on the Hart Foundation, things like that. And it just so happened that I saw that clip recently surfaced on IG, right? Like I said, so the fact that WWE is just an equal opportunity offender, and now this stuff is coming to the light like never before, to the point where you have mainstream outlets covering this, like whether it's CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, all these are different type of outlets, and the fact that they, the fact that they have their hands on this information, like I said, it speaks volumes. And it's just like I feel like it's been a long time coming, and and like I said, the fact that the Vince McMahon has just I mean, more than a laundry list. I mean, that this guy has cases on cases of I said, of racist, predatory angles and storylines and things like that. To the point where it's just like, I mean, I know it's been a long time coming, but I'm just looking back, like, wow, you're surprised. Like, when you look back on these things, it's like you're surprised that Vince hadn't been canceled much sooner. Like, for instance, and like I said, I want to keep diving into this topic, but it's it's already happened. In fact, it's resurfaced on Twitter, in regards to the Muhammad Hassan storyline situation, where we had Muhammad Hassan and these guys that were masked, so he's supposed to be like part of Al Qaeda, attacking the Undertaker, and like like I said, like I was saying, in regards to things like that, like just stuff like that. It's like you're surprised that Vince hadn't been packed up and canceled after that alone. Like I said, after a story like that by itself, after an angle like that by itself, that if anything, for anybody else, they were already had the plug pulled on them. But I see, but for things like that, for things like that to be part of the regular practice, and don't even get me started on Vince McMahon using the N word. I think it was, what was it, at Armageddon, I believe, and of course he used that with John Cena. With meanwhile Booker T was like right there, in that vicinity. So like I said, WWE has been notorious when it comes to this, and the language that they use in these documents is just heinous, reprehensible. It's just like, very condescending, and it's just like, and the thing about it is that, kudos to her for the way that she stood her ground. Kudos to Bianca Belair for the way that she stood her ground when they were repeatedly putting a demeaning, stereotypical storyline in front of her, like 3 times at least, and she repeatedly said no. And like I said, I applaud Bianca for the way that she stood her ground, and never forgets who she is, and like I said, and like I said, stuff like that comes to light. And and of course, as this lawsuit comes out, and now people are realizing, realizing that Trinity and Mercedes were right this whole time. So I would say that Twitter and the IWC owe both of them an apology. With all the details that they're coming out right now, they owe both of them a massive apology. And it's like I said, especially in the wake of Vince's return with that ridiculous Vincent Price, Walt Disney mustache that he's got, and and the thing is, you already know that he's still, just being treacherous and just up to no good. So, if anything, those are my thoughts, in regards to, in regards to this whole lawsuit situation. You know what I mean? And so, like I said, and the fact that 2023 is, is more than ever, is the time where, all this stuff is really coming to light. Um, you know, as Edge would say, on this day I see clearly, everything has come to light. So if anything, that is the case when it comes to WWE right now. And so, as a palate cleanser, at least um, a slow palate cleanser, if you will, as I talked about last week, in regards to my 50 greatest wrestlers list of all time. And of course, I've already released it on Twitter, on Instagram, on the Victorious Ones Facebook page, and things like that. And so I appreciate the feedback. And I would say that there's, it's gotten some some pretty solid reviews, like I said, some pretty good critical reviews as well. I mean, of course, with any list, it gets people to talk. Of course, you have people that have their ways of, of sort of disagreeing with it. I mean, of course, you have those that, that have respectful ways of disagreeing. You have those that like, for the most part, agree and see where I'm coming from. And of course, in that regards to my criteria and just the way the list flows. So anyway, like I said, for me, my criteria, it was pretty much based off of what I've seen from PWI, as well as BRP, Black Wrestling. So I got from originally mainly from Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and of course Black Wrestling got theirs from PWI as well. And so and also my my presentation was inspired by the BRP 50. And the thing is, I'm not ashamed to admit it. What I mean. So like I say, I'm not ashamed to admit that my presentation was heavily inspired by the BRP 50. And just how well that list has been received. I was like, you know what? Let me go back to the drawing board, because the thing about it is that I had done this list before, right? And I'd done this list before, and I did it like back in 2015, and it was a response to my dissatisfaction of WWE's list. So I was like, you know what, I said, I was like, you know what, let me, I was like, you know what, let me tell a better story. Let me put more effort, more time, more commitment, and more detail into this list than they did. Because theirs was absolute laziness and just nothing but political BS, right? And just very disrespectful. So I was like, you know what, let me go and like I say, let me establish my own rules. So let me show how it can be done better. So that was my whole mission. And so and of course, as time has gone on, and I've seen the careers of Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins unfold. And the thing about it was that, even though this is the year after Daniel Bryan's WrestleMania 30, even though I did the list like after Daniel Bryan's WrestleMania 30 moment, I felt like, I felt like I had to, like, sort of like digest things more when it came to him. And so as time has gone on, and he's added more to his resume and things like that. I was like, you know what? Now the time has come, where I can officially, like, really, like, say, I can really put him on this list, and so and really give him his just due, right? So You know what I mean? So if anything, so as far like Islam, when it comes to like, it's like when it comes to like, like the main new entries, say would be Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Daniel Bryan's. And so, like, and of course, I believe that I've graded them accordingly. So, um, anyway, like I said, some of my criteria consists of the following: the in-ring achievements, technical ability, influence, importance to your promotion. Mainly when it comes to drawing power, cultural impact. In regards to what type of like I said, what type of imprint that you leave on wrestling, and as well as the competition, how well you are when it comes to at least how much do you shine when it comes to the competition right in front of you. So that so if anything, those were like my primary criteria. And I believe that this list um, grades accordingly, and I think there's a very fair and even sort of balance. And also at the same time, like I said, I respect history, I respect nostalgia, but at the same time, I'm not going to let that blind my better judgment. Also, at the same time, I don't make myself a prisoner of the moment, and just live in today's time as if nothing else ever happened before or after. You know what I mean? So if anything, that's pretty much that's my criteria in that regard. And I know that of course, I know on Twitter that there was somebody who was asking me about my criteria, and so of course, when I share this with them, they'll just try and throw out, just throw out, like trying to like put an asterisk next to certain people that are on the list because of their accomplishments, in the sense that, like, talking about like, what if somebody else was in that position, then I believe that they would have would have gotten the rise that somebody else got, or whatever. But at the same time, I don't go by what ifs. I go by what has happened in front of me. And I know that that I guess the thing was they didn't really want to go by in-ring achievements, but at the same time, that's one of the ultimate barometers that you have to measure things by: in-ring achievements. And if anything, PWI measures by in-ring achievements, BRP measures by in-ring achievements. Achievements matter. They're a critical part of anything, whether it's wrestling, whether it's football, basketball. Those things matter. Fair, unfair, regardless of the circumstances, things like that. And so like I said, that's why I gotta get this off my chest. Like I said, I don't play what if games, right? Like I said, I like the same way I don't live my life by what if. I don't do my list by what if. And like for instance, somebody was throwing out a scenario because of the fact that Roman is where he is on this list, and so, talking about how he's gotten chance after chance, whereas if Seth Rollins, if you swap Roman Reigns, with Seth Rollins, and the Rollins would have the same success. But at the same time, who's to say that Seth hasn't been that position, and Seth's work is great. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, it's just, like I said, at the same time, Seth has been a multi-time champion himself. But, but at the same time, like I said, Roman's impact is greater when it comes to business standpoint. You know what I mean? So, so it's just, so it's just like they both exist in the same time. Seth, has as much, has as much of opportunity, as much, as much time to make an impact as Roman does. But at the same time, it's just like, like I said, there's only, like with the exception of like Rock and Austin, generally when it comes to eras, there's only truly one room for one at the top, right? And so in this era, Roman is the guy that's at the top. As I said before, if we're going to use comic references, Roman is Thor, Seth is Loki. Like I said, regardless of how you feel about the MCU, generally speaking, Loki's not gonna be the central figure as long as Thor's around. As popular as he is, as entertaining as he is as much as people, like I said, as much as people cheer for him, at the same time, like I said, at the same time, Thor is always going to be top billing. Same thing when it comes to wrestling. As great as Seth is, he's a workhorse and everything like that. Don't get me wrong. He's, like pretty much Roman's rival, dance partner, whatever. But at the same time, this is the era that Roman's in. Like so, Roman has a certain presentation to him. Roman's more marketable, and one of my criteria is also, when it comes to drawing power, moving merch matters. And so it's just like, and also at the same time, like I said, Roman's, like Roman's so believable, and even though it took a while for him to really like tap into this, but at the same time, as soon as Roman tapped into this character, it's just like his stock went up significantly. And so for somebody to say that, if you were replace Seth and Roman, that's like putting an asterisk next to everything that Roman's done. This guy that has beaten cancer twice, this guy that has been ridiculed by the internet for years and years. Like I say, there's so many things they've had to face, and it's not his fault that he comes from a wrestling family. He didn't ask to be born into it, the same way that nobody else ever asked to be born into their family, right? And so but anyway, I digress. Whatever, that's a whole nother thing. I wanted to say that for another time. But like I said, there's a lot I had to get off my chest in that regard. So like I said, like I said, Roman is where he is for a reason, because I feel like historically, when it comes to criteria, other than you like say outside of like in-ring ability or whatever, I feel like Roman checks off more boxes. And I know that I've gotten some feedback when it comes to where I've ranked like the Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels thing. As great as Bret was, his Achilles heel was always his mic skills. And also, and so of course that's where HBK has the advantage over him when it comes to charisma, when it comes to sorry about that, when it comes to overall just a more complete body of work, who has a more ironclad legacy. Fair unfair, Shawn Michaels has the advantage in that aspect. Is Bret a better technician? Was Bret a better in-ring technician than Shawn Michaels? Absolutely. Shawn would even admit it himself. But when it comes to being a performer, when it comes to, excuse me, like I say, when it comes to being a better performer, when it comes to more entertaining, when it comes to a better match catalog, and just like I said, more ironclad resume, especially when it came to the second half of his career, which just added even more. Meanwhile, of course, Bret's career ended up dying in WCW, unfortunately. But at the same time, that's not enough to knock him out the top 10. Like I say, even with his bad break, and even with Bret's bad break in WCW, he's still top 10 all time, right? But at the same time, like I said, I'm a fan of both of them. But at the same time, I'm not gonna be delusional about it either, and also just when you look at a consensus standpoint, I feel like historically, from a consensus standpoint, Shawn Michaels is usually going to get the edge when it comes to all-time rankings. Kind of like Magic versus Bird. As great as Larry Bird was, he was terrific. He was tremendous. He's a one of a kind. You know what I mean? Like, and he was one of the guys who truly saved the league along with Magic Johnson. But in NBA lore, historically, when it comes to legacy, when it comes to just their body of work and just the imprint on the game, who is more influential, I would have to say it's Magic, who has a more ironclad resume when it comes to championships and finals MVPs, and just impact on the NBA finals, impact on your influence when it comes to point guards and things like that. Magic gets the edge in that aspect. And that's how I see it when it comes to HBK and Bret, and I kind of want to save a little bit more of that, for in regards to next week's conversation. But like I said, that's just pretty much like sort of like my overview, in that regard. And so, so of course I'm just gonna look, let me slow down. Now on my WordPress page, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna give more detail in regards to at least like when it comes to the way that I unveil the list. Like when it comes to the website, it'll actually have more detail in regards to their bios, their accomplishments, and things like that. Um, but of course, in that regard, like I said, like I said, it's gonna be really really quick. And of course, 50 superstar Billy Graham, 49 Big Show, 48 Kevin Nash, 47 Ultimate Warrior, 46 Asher, he should not be named, Chris Benoit, 45 Big Van Vader, 44 Jeff Hardy, 43 Kane, 42 Booker T, 41 Great Muta, 40 Antonio Inoki, 39 Jimmy Superfly Snuka, 38 Jake the Snake Roberts, 37 Bob Backlund, 36 Buddy Rogers, 35 Luthez, 34 Terry Funk, 33 Ted DiBiase, 32 Mr. Perfect, 31 Seth Rollins, 30 Batista, 29 Mick Foley, 28 CM Punk, 27 AJ Styles, 26 Roddy Piper, 25 Bryan Danielson, 24 Rey Mysterio, 23 Ricky Steamboat, 22 Eddie Guerrero, 21 Edge, 20 Roman Reigns. There you go. 19 Brock Lesnar, 18 Dusty Rhodes, 17 Kurt Angle, 16 Randy Orton, 15 Jericho, 14 Sam Bruno, 13 Andre, 12 Harley Race, 11 Savage, 10 Sting, 9 Triple H, 8 Hogan. Number 8 is Hogan. Number 7 Bret Hart, of course. Number 6 Cena, 5 Shawn Michaels, 4 Ric Flair, 3 Undertaker, 2 The Rock, and number 1 none other than Stone Cold Steve Austin. So of course, like I said, I mean, the way that I was able to run that off in like a minute or less. But of course, those are, if anything, those are my top 50. And so I believe that the criteria that established and the way I try to measure things goes according to where they are ranked. And so for me, I stand on this list. I stand on what I believe in. And if anything, like when it comes to, like I say, in regards to, like I said, when it comes to where Brett stands, I believe is a very fair number. Because of the fact that I've seen lists that have him ranked much lower, like 13, 16, maybe 20, and things like that is very disrespectful. I saw Sports Illustrated rank Brett below Piper. I was like, no, heck no, I'm not letting that happen. Not on my watch. So, like I said, the fact that Brett's number 7 on this list, but at the same time, look at who's in front of him. Like I say, if people were to look at things the way that I look at it, that's just my perspective, because I don't see him going ahead of Austin, not ahead of Rock, certainly not ahead of Undertaker. Ric Flair is Ric Flair. Like I said, HBK when it comes to the total package. Like I said, when it comes to just being a better performer, just better, just having better quality, some more high profile matches rather, and also just Shawn's importance and his legacy when it comes to WrestleMania. That by itself speaks volumes. And also, like I said, the second half of his that second career that he had from 2002 all the way up until 2010 when he retired, right? So he came back and had nearly another decade-long career, So that has to come into play. Like I said, not only what he did early in his prime in the 90s, but also what he did during the ruthless aggression era against the likes of Cena, Jericho, Orton, Edge, you name it. And of course, Triple H, of course. Of course, those are back-to-back WrestleManias with Undertaker. Like I said, you factor all those things into play, and you cannot tell me that Shawn Michaels, you cannot tell me that Shawn Michaels is not a consensus top 5 of all time. Even if you don't have him in number 1, I firmly believe that he is a consensus top 5 choice of all time. So, what I mean, and also when it comes to of course, like I said, like I said, so so with all those things, all those things considered, that's why my list is the way that it is. So it's funny how I was able to, like I said, run the whole list off, and it's still less than an hour. That's pretty impressive. But anyway, like I said, that's my rundown of my top 50 all time. And of course, next week, like I said, I'm gonna get my guests to, to at least, get their thoughts on, give my thoughts, give their thoughts on, on how they feel about this as well. I mean, it's not going to take up the whole show, but it's just briefly, just get how they feel about it. But anyway, what I wanted to do was come up, like I said, I kind of came up with this idea on the fly, with my all-time draft when it comes to Raw and SmackDown. And so, especially in the wake of this recent WWE draft, it's like I feel like, what, now's the time to have my own fantasy draft, since I'm in a fantasy wrestling league myself, right? So of course, like I said, I came up with these names kind of on the fly. So it's not always a matter of the number that they're drafted in. It's just just the fact that they're drafted. And of course in that regard. So so of course, without further ado, this is my all-time Raw versus SmackDown draft. So first overall pick for Raw, the king of the Attitude Era, the Texas Rattlesnake himself, Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's my number one overall pick. And of course, for SmackDown, my number one overall pick is going to be the guy that that the show was named after, the great one himself, the People's Champion, The Rock. So those are my the first two picks when it comes to Raw and SmackDown. Then my next pick for Raw is going to be the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. Next pick for SmackDown is going to be The Undertaker. And then of course for Raw, and of course after that, for Raw it's going to be John Cena. For SmackDown it's going to be Roman Reigns. And then next up for Raw is going to be Triple H. Then for SmackDown it's going to be Edge. And then of course next up for Raw is going to be Bret Hart. And then of course next up for SmackDown is going to be Eddie Guerrero. Followed by Bret Hart is going to be Seth Rollins for Raw. And then for SmackDown it's going to be Batista. And then after Rollins, going to be the ninth wonder of the world, China. And then followed by Batista is going to be Kurt Angle. And then of course after China is going to be none other than Miss Stratusfaction herself, Trish Stratus. Followed by followed by, I think I already said that. I think I already said Kurt Angle, but like I said, after Batista's Kurt Angle, and then of course after Trish Stratus is going to be Becky Lynch. And then, of course, for SmackDown, it's going to be Rey Mysterio. And then of course, next up for Raw is going to be Mick Foley. And after that, it's going to be Charlotte Flair for SmackDown. And of course, for Raw, my next choice is going to be the EST herself, Bianca Belair, who just ended up going to SmackDown just recently. But I feel like her best work has always been on Raw. So of course after Bianca is going to be none other than Sasha Banks herself, now known as Mercedes Moné. Even though she's in another promotion, you still can't forget the imprint that she left in WWE. And of course, followed by Bianca is going to be Chris Jericho. And then after Jericho on SmackDown, it's going to be AJ Styles. And then of course after that on Raw, it's going to be Randy Orton. And then after Randy Orton, then on SmackDown is going to be the Usos, one of the greatest tag teams of all time. And then, of course, after Randy Orton is going to be Trish's greatest dance partner, Lita. And of course, after the Usos, I have JBL for so I have JBL for SmackDown, of course, because he's one of the longest reigning SmackDown champions of all time. And then after Lita, I have Big Daddy Cool Diesel. And of course, after JBL, I have Bayley. And then after Diesel, it's going to be Kane. And then after Bayley's going to be, I'm going to have Jeff Hardy. And then after that, you have the New Day. And then followed by Jeff Hardy's, I'm going to have the Dudley Boys. And that, of course, after the New Day, I have Asuka. And then the picks after that for Raw going to be Asuka, Razor, Daniel Bryan, CM Punk, Bobby Lashley, Christian, Matt Hardy, and the New Age Outlaws. So of course that's how I'm rounding things out. And of course after Jeff, it's gonna be the Dudley Boys, Booker T, Rhea Ripley, Miz, Big Show, and Natalia. So overall, like I said, I guess because I'm drafting this by myself. I'm actually when it comes to the all-time Raw roster, I have Austin, HBK, John Cena, Triple H, Bret Hart, Seth Rollins, Chyna, Trish Stratus, Becky Lynch, Mick Foley, Bianca, Y2J, Randy Orton, Lita, Diesel, Kane, The New Day, Asuka, Razor, because you can't have Diesel without Razor. Of course, after him is Daniel Bryan, CM Punk, Bobby Lashley, Christian, Matt Hardy, and the New Age Outlaws. For SmackDown, for SmackDown have The Rock, Undertaker, Roman Reigns, Edge, Eddie Guerrero, Batista, Kurt Angle, Brock Lesnar, Rey Mysterio, Charlotte, Sasha, AJ Styles, Usos, JBL, Bayley, Jeff Hardy, the Dudley Boys, Booker T, Rhea Ripley, The Miz, Big Show, and Natalia. It's like, so that's my all-time, it's an all-time fantasy draft when it comes to both Raw and SmackDown. So so like I said, I guess because of the fact that we're in the midst of draft season, I felt like it was only right for me to come up with my own fantasy draft, and so I guess pretty much just jumbled all this stuff all within the same time. I don't want it to sound like overwhelming or anything like that, but it's a lot I had to get off my chest. You know what I mean? So of course, so if anything, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. I hope I didn't sound like I am a tongue tied or anything like that. But like I said, I was just giving off my rundown of the draft. My all time SmackDown and Raw drafts, as well as just explaining my 50 greatest wrestlers list. And so like if anything, that's my recap. It's just nothing but recaps and rundowns for tonight's episode. And thank you very much for watching, and thank you very much for listening. And of course, may you have a great evening. And of course, I'll always make sure, if you're on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe and follow for more content. So thank you very much for watching. Later.